Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I have a presentation on this topic, wind energy trends and outlook, focusing on cost, execution trends, and financing. So let me just give the perspective on the outlook on the renewable energy sector that we have. The outlook is stable, thanks to the strong policy focus, given the fact that there is a very ambitious policy target of 500 gigawatt cumulatively for renewables by 2030. On top of that, of course, the regulatory, framework is well established, through long trajectory RP norms well laid out, by the ministry till 2030. Overall, untapped potential is also fairly significant. More than that, the tariff competitiveness of the renewable energy is quite superior. The big tariff discovery, both in the solar and the wind energy space, continue to remain quite, cost competitive. From the perspective of the ultimate off-takers, which are the state discoms. In fact, the bid tariffs, they remain quite, superior vis-a-vis the marginal variable cost of power purchase, for the state discoms. The bid tariffs have been, significantly well below 3 rupees a unit for the solar, while for the wind, they have inched above 3 rupees. But broadly speaking, these tariffs are quite cost competitive. Even in the CNI space, these tariffs are quite competitive against the grid tariffs. And more than that, the sustainability focus, by the CNI consumers have increased quite significantly over the last couple of years, and that is also driving demand, for the RE incrementally. Let me have a brief overview on the capacity addition in the renewables. You can clearly see these the overall renewable capacity, excluding the large hydro, as of now is about 150 gigawatt. And this capacity has actually grown and increased at a CAGR of 16% over the period of last 10 years, thanks to the strong policy support, favorable model price environment, strong execution trends, more importantly, improved tariff competitiveness. Of course, this capacity addition has been largely driven by the solar segment, and solar occupies a dominant share of 58%. Followed by wind with 32% as of June 2024. We have seen that the share of wind energy in the overall renewable energy capacity execution has actually dipped over a period, and that dip was quite significant when there was a structural shift from FIT to bid-based way back in 2017. And this is also happening because of the relatively higher execution challenges in wind vis-a-vis solar, and also the supply chain bottlenecks, and more importantly, the tariff competitiveness relatively being weaker for wind vis-a-vis the solar. So these are the broader issues which continue to impact the execution, trends for the wind energy sector. If you look at the tendering activity, in the renewable space, it remained fairly robust. In fact, all-time high in FY24. We saw the project tendering and award activity touching almost 48 gigawatt in FY24. If one were to factor the multiple and oversizing multiple of 3x in case of RTC tenders, the aggregate project capacity awarded in a single year is touching 60 gigawatt, which has been quite remarkable as far as the overall project tendering and award activity is concerned. So with that, there has to be a more focus in terms of the timely execution. So the timeliness in terms of execution, the timeliness in terms of signing the PPAs and the PSAs with the counterparties, the ultimate counterparties will be key monitorables in the near term. As a result, the overall project pipeline within the renewable energy sector is quite large. Almost 90 gigawatt as per the details available from the CEA's report. And within 90 gigawatt, almost 56 gigawatt is the under implementation pipeline for the solar, followed by about 18 gigawatt for wind and about 15 gigawatt for hybrid. So that's a fairly large pipeline, and so that will give a solid visibility in terms of the RE capacity addition within the country over the next 2 years. And which is why, we are expecting about 24 to 25 gigawatt of RE capacity addition to happen in the current year, which will be again dominated by the solar with about 18 to 19 gigawatt, followed by wind, which should touch close to about 3 gigawatt in the current year, And of course, the hybrid capacity addition will also be at around 3.5 to 4 gigawatt. So certainly, if you look at historical trends, as I mentioned earlier, that the wind capacity execution has been hindered because of relatively higher execution challenges. This year we expect some pickup in the wind capacity addition thanks to the wind capacity also getting added in the hybrid tenders, right? And there is an incremental focus on hybrid and FDRE and RTC tenders, which we have seen over the last 1 year, and that focus will continue, from the central nodal agencies, particularly SECI. And that will also support the wind capacity addition in the coming days. So if you look at this slide, as I mentioned, almost 20 gigawatt of project tenders have been awarded through bidding route in the wind sector. And within that, only about 7 gigawatt of wind capacity has been commissioned, right? Almost 5.7 gigawatt of wind capacity has been stuck or cancelled, leaving only about 7 gigawatt currently under execution. So there are, so these are the execution challenges, right? And we expect that 7 gigawatt of wind capacity addition to happen over the next 18 to 24 months. So that will also support, the wind capacity execution in the current year. If you look at the bid tariff trends for the wind projects, they have inched up of late, beyond 3 rupees unit, and that is also because of the upward pressure on the turbine pricing. And that is also happening because of limited, players with respect to the wind turbine OEMs, which is a current scenario. Some of the foreign wind turbine OEMs, they are showing lack of interest in the Indian, sector because of their focus on the commercial, pricing considerations. So there is a limitation in terms of, the turbine OEM availability. As we see, only Suzlon, Envision, and Inox, they happen to remain very, very active, wind turbine OEMs currently, with a very healthy order book, thanks to the kind of project activity that we have seen. So of course, that is also resulting some element of pricing upward pressure on the wind turbines, which has moved anywhere between 8 to 8.5 crore per megawatt, which used to be about 6.5 to 7 crore per megawatt 2 or 3 years before, right? So that is the kind of pricing upward pressure that we have seen over the last couple of years. And that is also getting reflected in the relatively higher wind bid tariffs vis-a-vis the solar tariffs. Solar tariffs we continue to see at 2.5 to 2.6 rupees a unit. That is also supported by the rock bottom low solar module pricing environment, even under the ALMM, thanks to the low cell price environment in China, even after factoring the the duty impact. So moving on to the RTC tariffs, so we have seen the incremental focus on RTC tenders, hybrid tenders, FDRE tenders, by the central nodal agencies, and we have seen the FDRE RTC tariffs remaining in the range of 4.5 to 4.8 rupees a unit, which is relatively competitive vis-a-vis the conventional tariffs. While certainly these tariffs are higher vis-a-vis the standalone wind or a standalone solar tariffs by almost 1 to 1.5 rupees a unit, and that is also because of the element of storage cost, which is getting factored in the FDRE tenders. All the FDRE tenders are the configurations are different depending upon the tender specifications, the minimum availability requirements, penalty requirements, the peak hour requirements, and so on and so forth. Every tender has got different specifications, different storage cycle requirements, and that is how the tariff dynamics also are working out differently. But having said that, these tariffs are still relatively competitive vis-a-vis the conventional cost. How these tariffs pan out in future will depend upon how the storage cost move up, trend in the coming days, which we'll discuss in the subsequent slides. So as I mentioned, the wind tariffs have remained higher than 3 rupees a unit in the recent bids, essentially because of the upward pressure on the the wind turbine cost, and also relatively higher execution challenges for the wind projects vis-a-vis the solar, and that is also getting reflected in the higher bid tariffs. In fact, these tariffs have remained anywhere between 3.2 to 3.4 rupees a unit vis-a-vis the solar tariffs, which consistently remain well below 3 rupees a unit. How these tariffs are viable? Certainly, the tariff viability for the wind project will be critically dependent upon, of course, the capital cost, which will be a function of, the wind turbine pricing. More importantly, the PLF expectation, and third is the cost of debt, right? So for a given project at a particular capital cost, and if the PPA tariff is at 3 rupees a unit, how does the DSCR sensitivities look like? Of course, the DSCR here we have sensitized to the two variables. One is the interest rate on one side, the PLF trend on the other side. So assuming the interest rate at 9.5%, for under construction project, and assuming the P90 wind PLF is 32%, the cumulative average DSCR post COD over a debt tenure of 18 years is 1.16x, right? And you can clearly see that the DSCR numbers are highly sensitive, to the PLF movement. For every 200 basis dip in the PLF, movement for a project at a given interest rate, the impact on the DSCR is almost, 9 to 10 basis points. So that's a fairly sizable, impact. So in that context, the ability to ensure those actual PLFs within the, the bid assumptions, within the P90, bid assumptions is extremely critical, from the viability perspective. And we have seen, by the way, a greater PLF variability risk when it comes to the wind projects. The wind projects, the PLF variability risk is relatively higher vis-a-vis solar. In case of solar projects, the PLF variability risk is relatively much lower. We have not seen a larger variation when it comes to solar, but definitely when it comes to wind, we have seen the PLF variability risk being higher. In fact, out of the number of projects that we rate, almost 60 to 70% of the wind projects that we rate, there has been a PLF underperformance by more than 10 to 15% vis-a-vis the P90. So that is the kind of, the variability risk, that we see, and which is why, from the rating perspective, the DSCR thresholds are relatively tighter when it comes to, the credit assessment of the wind project entities vis-a-vis the solar entities, essentially because of the PLF variability risk. So going forward, as I mentioned, the implementation of the RTC projects, the FDRE projects is systemically important, and that would also support, the acceleration of the renewable energy adoption going forward. As I mentioned, these RTC tariffs have remained in the range of 4.5 to 5 rupees a unit, which is still relatively competitive vis-a-vis the conventional cost of generation. But any further improvement in the RTC and the FDRE cost and the bid tariffs would all depend upon how the storage cost pan out. And on that front, in fact, there is a very encouraging trend. We have seen a significant decline in the battery pack cost in calendar year 2023. In fact, and that's a very encouraging trend when it comes to, having the storage cost element. In fact, the battery pack cost have actually gone down to as low as $140 per kilowatt hour. And in fact, basis the last 6 months data, which is again, as we understand, basis our discussions and interactions with various, industry stakeholders, we understand that the battery pack cost has actually come down in the range of $90 to $100 per kilowatt hour. And on a full APC basis, the battery energy storage capital cost is about $140 to $150 per kilowatt hour. So that's a pretty encouraging trend. At 139 CY23, the full capital cost was anywhere close to about 180 to 200. So that's an encouraging trend, and that is how, that is also getting reflected, in the storage tariffs. We have seen a sharp decline in the storage, bid tariffs. Look at the trend. I mean, the first one, which was at 1.3 crore per megawatt per annum, which was a SECI bid which happened in August 22, it actually has come down to as low as 0.45, which was as recent as, in a couple of months before, in June 24 by Juvenile. So we have seen a very, very impressive decline as far as the storage, tariff-linked projects. So, and that is precisely because of the, the battery storage pack decline that we have seen over the last 6 to 8 months. So, more importantly, whether, how long this decline, continues, whether there is a further decline, that is something which will be, a critical monitorables, for further improvement on the storage linked tariff-based projects. But having said that, these are very, very encouraging trends as for the RTC projects, for the FDRE projects to remain more competitive, when it comes to offtake by the state discoms. We have done some illustrative analysis for the battery storage bed, link projects. You can clearly see at, at a $150 per kilowatt hour or $150 to $175 per kilowatt hour capital cost, assuming the interest rate at 9.5%. Your DSCR, for the project developers who have won the project in the GUNL tender in the month of March 24 is fairly comfortable, 1.3 to 1.4 times. There are standard assumptions which we have, assumed in this. I mean, the winning bid is at 4.5 lakhs per megawatt per month. And, basis certain assumptions that we have, we see that, the viability is looking fairly comfortable at 4.5 lakhs per megawatt per month for a battery storage link project. So lastly, nothing is complete without discussing on the discoms. The discoms are the ultimate off-takers. They are the the ultimate counterparties. The financial health of the discoms continues to remain a matter of concern in the when we discuss on the power sector entire value chain. Of course, there are a number of policy reforms which have happened over the last 2 years. One of them is the LPS scheme, the Lead Payment Surcharge scheme. Thanks to lead payment surcharge schemes, the overdues, the legacy overdues as on May 2022 are getting corrected in a timely manner through EMI, thanks to the incremental debt availability from PFC REC to the participating state discoms. More than that, the regular payments are also getting corrected more or less within 70 to 75 days across the states. I mean, that's a remarkable improvement under the LPS scheme. Of course, there are stricter provisions which are helping the discoms. Otherwise, there will be a curtailment in terms of the open access availability for availing short-term power, medium-term power, or long-term power. So those rules are working quite well. Whether this trend is sustainable, that will all depend upon how the cash flow situation of the state discoms improve going forward. And for that to happen, the discoms will have to revise their retail supply tariffs. They will have to improvise on their operational efficiencies. They will have to cut down the AT&C loss levels and so on and so forth. So the progress towards these fundamental issues in terms of AT&C loss reduction, in terms of the tariff adequacy, will be key in terms of a sustainable improvement in the cash flow position for the state discoms. So so that's the take on the LPS scheme and the overall progress and the impact on the discoms payment behavior. And lastly, as I mentioned, these reforms are underway to revive the distribution segment. Of course, one of that is RDSS. The smart metering is a sub-segment within the RDSS. And that is being implemented in number of states. Of course, the penetration of the smart metering is still low in single digits, percentage single digits. But the objective is to improve the AT&C loss levels, within the range of 12 to 15% at a pan-India level. And that is something which will be a key monitorable. LPS rules, as we just discussed, they are, the result so far is good, but the sustainability will depend upon the structural issues, the ability to correct those structural issues. Fuel and power purchase adjustment scheme, the surcharge. I mean, there is an inconsistency in terms of implementation that needs to be implemented more consistently, by the state discoms across the states, because that is something which is an uncontrollable cost element and that needs to be passed on. So unfortunately, these norms are inconsistent. Subsidy has to be paid timely and adequately, and on that front, there is a good progress. Over the last 2 years, we see very improved subsidy payout, by the respective state governments, and that is also helping the discoms, to maintain the cash flow levels and to ensure that, the payments are honored timely. But more than that, the tariff adequacy is still a matter of concern because tariffs are not revised. I mean, the average tariff revision by the discoms is hardly 1 or 2%, while the increase in the average power purchase cost and the cost of power supply is significantly higher. And finally, on the lending side, of course, the financial institutions, they are following some of the tighter additional prudential norms. So overall, these reforms are underway and some of the things are key monitorables. And this is something which is extremely important to have a sustainable growth in the Indian power sector when it comes to the capacity addition, given the fact that these discoms are ultimate counterparties. So with that, let me conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kadam, for giving a great overview on cost and financing and the overall power sector as well. A lot, the delegates were clicking pictures, so maybe we can move to the audience questions first. If anybody has a doubt, query, question, comments. Anybody on the left? Anybody on the right? Okay. Mr. Kadam, earlier in the day, uh, we were discussing the VGF for offshore wind as well. And so maybe a comment on that, whether it will be sufficient, the VGF would be sufficient, and will developers will be incentivized to bid for the projects offshore wind?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So this was discussed in a detail in the panel today. See, currently the VGF component meets about 25 to 30% of the capital cost. The capital cost for the offshore wind, as was highlighted by the panel members, is anywhere between 20 to 25 crore per megawatt, right? And VGF is is about 25 to 27% of the capital cost. So even after factoring the VGF component and even after factoring the high PLF potential for such offshore projects, which can be anywhere between 45 to 50%, unlike onshore where the PLF levels are anywhere between 25 to 35%. So even within that, even after factoring that, the viable tariff comes at around 5.5 to 6 rupees a unit, right? So which is relatively much higher vis-a-vis the average power purchase cost for the state discoms. The average power purchase cost, for the state discoms is anywhere between 4 to 4.5, in some cases above 4.5. Okay, so even if we have to assume 4.5, so that means it is still higher by 1 rupee. So because the discoms are going to be the ultimate counterparties, right? So from the discoms counterparty perspective, the tariff at 5.5 is still relatively higher. So in that context, of course, that is why I think there is a ask by the industry to have a greater, even higher share of VGF, so that there is a direct and favorable impact on the tariff expectation, which could be more cost competitive, from the off-taker's perspective. But having said that, the fact that there is a VGF, the fact that there is a greater, nodal agency support, to do the studies, etc. So these are all initial, support, implementation support is quite favorable, from the government to kickstart the offshore wind program. But there are a number of execution challenges which panel highlighted, given the inherent nature of such projects. Yeah.
Yes. Also in your PP, I think one of the calculations you assumed 8.5 crores per megawatt for a wind project. So maybe your outlook on this cost for the coming years, like what is your outlook on it?
So as I discussed and as I highlighted in my presentation that today if you look at the wind turbine OEM scenario, there are only few and limited number of players. Unlike in solar, there are plenty of options which are available under ALMM, right? Which is not the case with wind, right? Some of the foreign very reputed OEMs, they are not showing interest in the Indian market as far as the wind energy sector is concerned. So that is also leading sort of upward, pricing pressure on the wind turbines. And the wind turbine pricing overall capital cost is turning anywhere between 8 to 8.5 crore per megawatt as of now, okay? Which has actually gone up from the level of 6.5 to 7 crore per megawatt. So there is an element of some increase which has already happened because of, the shift in the market dynamics and the fact that there are only few limited players. And that is getting reflected in the bid wind tariffs as well. And which is why the bid tariffs are anywhere in the range of 3 to 3.3 rupees a unit, depending on the perceived counterparty credit risk. And these, even if let's say the bid tariff quoted for the wind energy is above 3, which is in the range of 3 to 3.5, that is also fairly cost competitive from the discom's perspective. As I mentioned, the marginal variable power purchase cost in the bottom 25% for the power procurement plan for any state discom, on an average is 3.5, right? So in that context, even the wind bid tariffs, as long as it remains below 3.5, it is still a cost competitive proposition, from the discom's perspective. Yeah.
And lastly, your outlook on the per megawatt cost of offshore wind project. I think we've heard a number in the range of 20 crores, 25 crores. So what's
Yeah, so we have, so that is something which we understand, through interactions with the industry participants. So the number is not different that, the panel has highlighted. The range is anywhere between 20 to 23 crore per megawatt.
Okay. Thank you. With this, we'll end the session.